The New York Times story is by Joe Becker and Mike McIntyre, and here's how it begins. The headline in Pravda trumpeted President Vladimir Putin's latest coup. Russian nuclear energy conquers the world. The article, January 2013, detailed how the Russian Atomic Energy Agency had taken over a Canadian company with uranium mining stakes stretching from Central Asia to the American West. The deal made Russia one of the world's largest uranium producers and brought Putin closer to his goal of controlling much of the global uranium supply chain. The sale gave the Russians control of 1/5 of all uranium production capacity in the U.S. Now, since uranium is considered a strategic asset with implications for national security, the deal had to be approved by a committee composed of representatives from a number of United States government agencies. And among the agencies that signed off on this was the State Department, then headed by Hillary Rodham Clinton. As the Russians gradually assumed control of Uranium One in 3 separate transactions from 2009 to 2013, a flow of cash made its way to the Clinton Foundation. The chairman of Uranium One used his family foundation to make 4 donations to the Clintons, totaling $2.35 million. Those contributions were not publicly disclosed by the Clintons, despite an agreement Mrs. Clinton had struck with the Obama White House to publicly identify all donors. Other people with ties to the company made donations as well. Mrs. Clinton failed to follow through on most of her disclosure promises. This is just one example. In fact, she had even promised that the Clinton Crime Family Foundation would stop taking foreign money when she was Secretary of State, but it didn't. Shortly after the Russians announced their intention to acquire a majority stake in this Canadian company, Uranium One, Mr. Clinton, after the foundation got $2.35 million, Bill Clinton got $500,000 for a single speech in Moscow from a Russian investment bank with links to the Kremlin that was promoting stock in the Canadian uranium company, Uranium One. At the time, both the Russian Uranium Agency and the U.S. government made promises intended to ease concerns about ceding control, CED, giving away control of the company's assets to the Russians. These promises have been repeatedly broken. The New York Times examination of the Uranium One Deal, this is the Canadian company, is based on dozens of interviews as well as a review of public records and security filings in Canada, Russia, and the U.S. Some of the connections between Uranium One and the Clinton Foundation were unearthed by Peter Schweitzer, a former fellow at the Hoover. They've made a deal. The New York Times is one of the papers that has made a deal with Schweitzer, this evil, hated Republican from Hoover. They made a deal exclusive with him, as did the Washington Post, some others, to exclusively report excerpts from his book. And this is one of them. Schweitzer, by the way, has said his next book is going to be going after Jeb Bush. By the way, just a little sidelight. Going to go after the Jeb Bush family finances the same way the Clintons have been pursued. Mr. Schweitzer provided a preview of material in the book to the New York Times, which scrutinized his information and then built upon it with its own reporting. So the Times is confirming what Schweitzer reports in his book and saying, we found even more. So you'd have to say here that the New York Times has joined the vast right-wing conspiracy against the Clintons if they're sidling deals up here with Schweitzer. I'm being facetious, of course. Then the Times lists donors, part of the uranium deal, to the Clinton Foundation and the amounts. Frank Giustra, $31.3 million and a pledge for $100 million more. He built a company that later merged with Uranium One. Here's the bottom line. Money was given to Bill and Hillary Clinton, passing through the Clinton Foundation, that enabled Russia to pursue their goal of controlling the uranium market in the world. Putin, again, just to remind you, has publicly stated that he wants to control that market. If he could, he'd corner it. Mrs. Clinton has enabled it, all for the opportunity to be personally, financially enriched. This is just one of the stories that's out today. Reuters has another one, and the Washington Post with yet